So last year, REDMAGIC threw a curveball into space when they introduced a device that legitimately sits right in the middle of a full-size gaming tablet and a premium smartphone, known as the Astra. It packed the latest mobile processor and chipset at the time, which was the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 4 and the Red Core R3 Pro. But what really blew the socks off competing brands was the zero fucks given display. At a time where the popularity lay in LCD panels with modest resolutions and refresh rates, REDMAGIC spared no expense, cramming a whopping 3.6 million pixels within a 9.06 mini OLED display. And the chef's kiss? A 1600 max nit brightness accompanied by a 165Hz refresh rate. That was a ridiculous refresh rate for its time, and it still is today, to keep it a buck. So I'm still kind of scratching my head now, given that REDMAGIC has had the audacity to drop the Astra 2 with an even better display. Like, no one is really touching last year's generation display in this form factor. Most companies would simply run it back, but REDMAGIC is apparently in competition with themselves. The Astra 2 features the same top-tier 2.4K display with a max 1600 nits brightness, but the Astra 2 is significantly faster now because it's sporting a 185Hz refresh rate. And the last generation Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset is now replaced by the latest Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5. On the GPU side, we're looking at an upgrade from Qualcomm's Adreno 830 to Adreno 840. Now, aside from the CPU and GPU upgrade, the all-new Energy Cube 3.0 software is much more tightly integrated with the Snapdragon chipset, and it not only benefits heavyweight native Android games, but it also opens the door to a lot of beefy PC emulated games, as well as console emulation. REDMAGIC also did something more unexpected in regards to the internal cooling system from Astra 1 versus Astra 2. You may recall Astra 1 used an aggressive active cooling system dubbed ICE-X, which featured an internal mini turbofan capable of spinning up to 20,000 RPM. Astra 2, on the other hand, ditches the turbofan completely in favor of what is referred to as a closed-loop liquid cooling system, and that system is heavily reliant on liquid metal 3.0. Now, when it comes to a direct thermal head-to-head between the two systems, here's how I would describe my experience. Generally, for me, Astra 1 runs a couple of degrees cooler than Astra 2, but there are some very key and significant points to highlight to provide more context to that general statement. Number one, the Astra 2 is leveraging a substantially more powerful SoC, and as a result, it naturally produces more heat while sustaining higher CPU and GPU performance. So leveling the playing field from a power profile standpoint is still going to produce skewed results. For example, you can see in these 3D Mark benchmarks for the rise profile for both units, while temps come in a little bit lower for the Astra 1, the Astra 2 performance ceiling is much higher. To really drive that point home, take a look at these set of 3D Mark Wildlife benchmarks, where I pushed the Astra 1 to the very limit with Diablo power profile versus the Astra 2's rise profile. The Astra 2 still heavyweights Astra 1 while maintaining significantly lower thermal temperatures at the more ideal rise power profile. So I just wanted to highlight that, because again, Astra 2's cooling system truly does have to work harder while balancing thermal efficiency and performance in an effort to minimize throttling as much as possible. Anyway, taking a closer look at the exterior build of Astra 2 versus Astra 1, the front and rear cameras are essentially identical, but REDMAGIC did make a few subtle but meaningful changes outside of the RGB accented window on the backside. One of those changes is that they brought the side speakers up about an inch or two so that your hands or an attached controller are less likely to fully encapsulate the speakers. The Astra 2 is also marginally lighter, which is especially impressive given that it features a slightly larger battery. It also runs a bit quieter than its predecessor. At max load, the noise level hovered around 30 decibels, while the Astra 1 generally sat around the low 40s. But man, am I happy to see that a second USB port has been added on the Astra 2. But it is a bummer that it is a 2.0 port versus 3.2 and can only support up to 40 watts charging and 480 megabytes per second transfer. So I want to kick off this section with first getting into some mobile native games before we take a look at some console and PC emulation as well as some display casting. Of course, we gotta start with Call of Duty Mobile. There's two ways you can go about graphics settings. You can max out the graphics textures and get a steady 60 FPS, or you can go with very high textures and get a very smooth 165 FPS with virtually no dips to speak of. As you can see, I don't have any experimental features enabled, not super resolution, variable rate shading, performance self-adaptive. because you flat out don't need it for the Astra 2. And a lot of these experimental features will reduce visual quality because they're geared towards reducing GPU workload. Okay, Genshin Impact in the Android environment, as I'm sure most of you guys know, is still capped at 60, and I have no idea why. But you can very easily bypass this restriction by leveraging this really cool inbuilt plugin directly in GameSpace, which is known as Superior Pic Quality. You'll be able to hit a steady and smooth 120 FPS at max graphics, and it is awesome. Wuthering Waves is another similar title to Genshin that imposes a lower FPS cap, but using that very same frame rate boost interpolation plugin will get you similar results. Arena Breakout is an incredibly impressive title to showcase for the Astra 2. Currently, you're able to hit 165 FPS without any in-game or external frame generation boost. PlayStation Remote Play. Now there is the PlayStation Portal when you're on the go, which does deliver a solid gaming experience, but then there is the Astra 2, alongside an official DualSense controller. Remote Play on the go just doesn't get any better than this. The Nintendo Switch 2. Man, I love the ecosystem that it's built around, but the biggest knock on this system for me has always been the built-in display, because the more budget LCD panel just leaves so much to be desired, even compared to the OG Switch OLED. So I've done a lot of experimenting with portable monitors, and I've even experimented with casting the Switch image onto a high-res gaming tablet, which is exactly what you're looking at here. And with the addition of the second USB-C port, this experience and this setup is even better. Before we continue, just gotta take a second to highlight this Nintendo Switch Pro controller Samurai Edition ergonomic skin from PlayVital. I've never been a fan of the smooth texture of the Pro controller until I landed this skin. PlayVital makes some very solid and affordable gaming accessories, so definitely check them out. Now, in order to pull this off, all you need is a very inexpensive capture card, which you'll connect in between the Switch dock and the Astra 2. You'll also need to download a video capture app that is highly customizable like the Nora app that I'm currently using. You can adjust video format and FPS among other parameters. Now, the biggest knock to this setup is that for your average inexpensive capture card, you're more than likely going to be hitting a max 60 FPS cap. But unfortunately, you can almost count on one hand the number of Switch 2 games that can truly leverage a sustainable FPS above 60. Now, when it comes to console emulation in the Android environment, the Astra 2 absolutely crushes emulation all the way up to PS2. I have the emulation front end set up here, housing all of my emulators, but I've been playing a whole lot of the God of War franchise on this tablet. Ghost of Sparta, Chains of Olympus, original God of War 2, to name a few. Smooth 60 FPS, easy. And if REDMAGIC keeps going with this Astra product line, it's only a matter of time before we're able to go all the way up to God of War 3. Lately, PC emulation on Android has just been one of the most fascinating phenomenons. It's always been a dream to utilize your mobile device to carry your PC libraries with you wherever you go. But until more recently, the reality was that mobile hardware just wasn't quite ready to make the leap. And so streaming sources like GeForce and Moonlight have been the more proven and reliable de facto. But the Astra 2 is really changing that. And my eyes have really been opened, because for a long time, PC emulation on Android has largely been experimental. But thanks to new, more powerful mobile devices and mature front ends like GameHub, PC emulation is no longer an enthusiast platform. It's becoming very legitimate. I have the Astra set up here with an external monitor using REDMAGIC's casting mode, which allows for using the inbuilt display as a mouse. And I have this entire thing set up using a single premium top tier USB 4 cable from Silkland, because this cable literally does everything. It supports 80 gigabytes per second data transfer bidirectional, and it has a 120 gigabyte video bandwidth. Plus, it supports a max of 240 watts fast charging. When it comes to these high spec gaming devices, don't settle for mediocre cables. I know a lot of USB-C cables look alike these days, but trust me, they are not all created equally. Anyway, I have Street Fighter 6 up running right now, and I'm hitting 60 FPS natively without any upscaling techniques. And I cannot believe how incredible this game runs and looks on this ultra slim mini gaming tablet. And you can even speed things up even more using REDMAGIC's inbuilt frame generator. And right now, I'm just showcasing some of the PC emulated games that I've had some really great success with. I can't believe Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is among that list. But right now, the Astra 2 is fundamentally in one of the best possible positions as compared to other gaming-focused Android devices from just a few years back. Just keep in mind that your success with the Android PC emulation is going to be very game dependent. Okay, so it's about that time to discuss pricing, and I'm sure you guys are more than well aware of what's going on in the tech and gaming space right now, so brace yourselves. Just as with the original Astra, the Astra 2 is going to be offered in two colorways, Eclipse and Starfrost, and the original Astra 1 that you see here is actually that exact Eclipse variant, while Astra 2 is Starfrost, so you can get a nice close side by side. Each colorway is going to have two configurations to start at least 12 gigs of RAM with 256 gigs of storage, which once the dust settles, following the close of the $699 early bird special, is going to retail for $749. And then there will be the larger configuration model, which will feature 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of storage, will have an early bird for $799, followed by the $849 retail price tag. Getting the obvious out of the way, these tablets ain't cheap in any way, shape, or form. Honestly, what shiny new piece of tech is these days? But based on a couple things. Number one, the fact that the Astra 2 literally has the industry-leading hardware in this space and is legitimately the most powerful Android tablet in the world right now. And number two, based on the memory crisis and everything else in between, I honestly thought that these tablets were going to be even more expensive than what they are right now. Of course, would have loved to see a model that's sporting 24 gigs of RAM for the Astra 2. But come on, who's trying to pay upwards of $1,000 for an Android gaming tablet? You know, I look at devices like the Steam Deck, which was released 4 years ago, and the insanely inflated price right now. And it's just a relief to see that this entry-level Astra 2 isn't leaps and bounds above that pricing. As I said before, the display alone is absolutely untouchable. That said, the Astra 2 is not a perfect product, and I've condensed my gripes down to two major issues. The first item is more software related, and if you're a REDMAGIC guru and you know a way around this issue that I'm having, scream from the hills in the comments. REDMAGIC desperately needs to incorporate the ability to kill games simply while you're in game space. Once that magic button is flipped, launching a game and then returning back to the home screen of game space does not terminate that game. It actually suspends it in the background. And the only reliable method that I've found so far is to actually exit game space so that you can swipe up naturally to completely terminate the session. My next gripe is hardware specific and related to the all-new USB-C added port. Having a second port for charging really does improve the gaming experience, and it adds a wealth of flexibility. But it would have been a real game changer if they would have made that second port USB 3.2 also. Because I'm going to call it out again as I did for the original Astra. The addition of a micro SD card reader is something that users really want. Native games, console games, and don't even let me get started on PC emulation. These games these days are swallowing up storage like nobody's business. So without the addition of a micro SD card reader, the next best thing would have been two high-speed USB ports for attaching external storage devices. You do have the one, which is very much appreciated, but once that port is occupied, you're only going to be able to leverage 40-watt charging at 480 megabytes per second data transfer. But I don't know, man. I just want a fat micro SD card reader so I can just dump all of my emulated games onto it. But other than that, the Astra 2 is just such a functional and highly flexible device to carry around with you. Native mobile games, remote play, screen mirroring, display casting, console emulation, PC emulation, and I didn't even go into productivity or movie streaming. You guys let me know if you already own the Astra 1 and you're considering upgrading to Astra 2, or are you just currently in the market for a high-powered gaming smartphone or tablet? If you have a Switch 1 or Switch 2, have you ever experimented with capture cards and tablets? What was your experience and do you recommend it? As always, thanks for watching and supporting the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one.